Chapter 3, Fibre to Fabric. Pahelian Bujho won the first prize in a science quiz competition held at their school. They were very excited and decided to use the prize money to buy clothes for their parents. When they saw a large variety of cloth material, they got confused. Figure 3.1. The shopkeeper explained that some clothes or fabrics were cotton and some were synthetic. He also had woolen mufflers and shawls. There were many silk saris as well. Pahelian Bujho felt very excited. They touched and felt these different fabrics. Finally, they bought a woolen muffler and a cotton sari. After their visit to the cloth shop, Pahelian Bujho began to notice various fabrics in their surroundings. They found that bed sheets, blankets, curtains, tablecloths, towels and dusters were made from different kinds of fabrics. Even their school bags and the gummy bags were made from some kind of fabric. They tried to identify these fabrics as cotton, wool, silk or synthetic. Can you also identify some fabrics? 3.1 Variety in fabrics. Activity 1. Visit a nearby tailoring shop. Collect cuttings of fabrics left over after stitching. Feel and touch each piece of fabric. Now, try to label some of the fabrics as cotton, silk, wool, or synthetic after asking for help from the tailor. Do you wonder what these different fabrics are made of? When you look at any fabric, it seems a continuous piece. Now, look at it closely. What do you notice? Figure 3.2. Activity 2. Select a piece of cotton fabric you labeled in Activity 1. Now, try to find a loose thread or yarn at one of the edges and pull it out. Figure 3.3. If no loose yarns are visible, you can gently pull one out with a pin or needle. We find that a fabric is made up of yarns arranged together. What are these yarns made of? 3.2 Fibre. Activity 3. Take out a yarn from a piece of cotton fabric. Place this piece of yarn on the table. Now, press one end of the yarn with your thumb. Scratch the other end of the yarn along its length with your nail as shown in Figure 3.4. Do you find that at this end, the yarn splits up into thin strands? Figure 3.5. You might have observed something similar when you try to thread a needle. Many a time, the end of the thread is separated into a few thin strands. This makes it difficult to pass the thread through the eye of the needle. The thin strands of thread that we see are made up of still thinner strands called fibers. Fabrics are made up of yarns and yarns are further made up of fibers. Where do these fibers come from? The fibers of some fabrics such as cotton, jute, silk and wool are obtained from plants and animals. These are called natural fibers. Cotton and jute are examples of fibers obtained from plants. Wool and silk fibers are obtained from animals. Wool is obtained from the fleece of sheep or goat. It is also obtained from the hair of rabbits, yak and camels. Silk fiber is drawn from the cocoon of silkworm. For thousands of years natural fibers were the only ones available for making fabrics. In the last 100 years or so, fibers are also made from chemical substances, which are not obtained from plant or animal sources. These are called synthetic fibers. Some examples of synthetic fibers are polyester, nylon and acrylic. 3.3 Some plant fibers. Cotton. Have you ever made wicks for oil lamps? What do you use for making these wicks? This cotton wool is also used for filling mattresses, quilts or pillows. Take some cotton wool, pull it apart and look at its edges. What do you observe? The small, thin strands that you see are made up of cotton fibers. Where does this cotton wool come from? It is grown in the fields. Cotton plants are usually grown at places having black soil and warm climate. Can you name some states of our country where cotton is grown? The fruits of the cotton plant, cotton bolls, are about the size of a lemon. After maturing, the bolls burst open and the seeds covered with cotton fibers can be seen. Have you ever seen a cotton field that is ready for picking? It looks like a field covered with snow. Fig. 3.6. From these bolls, cotton is usually picked by hand. Fibers are then separated from the seeds by combing. This process is called ginning of cotton. Ginning was traditionally done by hand. Fig. 3.7. These days, machines are also used for ginning. Jute. Jute fiber is obtained from the stem of the jute plant, Fig 3.8. It is cultivated during the rainy season. In India, jute is mainly grown in West Bengal, Bihar, and Assam. The jute plant is normally harvested when it is at flowering stage. The stems of the harvested plants are immersed in water for a few days. The stems rot and fibers are separated by hand. To make fabrics, all these fibers are first converted into yarns. How is it done? 3.4 Spinning cotton yarn. You can try making cotton yarn yourself. Activity 4. Hold some cotton wool in one hand. Pinch some cotton between the thumb and forefinger of the other hand. Now, gently start pulling out the cotton, while continuously twisting the fibers. Figure 3.9. Are you able to make a yarn? The process of making yarn from fibers is called spinning. In this process, fibers from a mass of cotton wool are drawn out and twisted. This brings the fibers together to form a yarn. A simple device used for spinning is a hand spindle, also called takli. Figure 3.10. Another hand-operated device used for spinning is chakha. Figure 3.10. Use of chakha was popularized by Mahatma Gandhi as part of the independence movement. He encouraged people to wear clothes made of homespun yarn and shun imported cloth made in the mills of Britain. Spinning of yarn on a large scale is done with the help of spinning machines. After spinning, yarns are used for making fabrics. 3.5 Yarn to fabric. There are many ways by which fabrics are made from yarns. The two main processes are weaving and knitting. Weaving. In Activity 2, you might have noticed that a fabric is made up of two sets of yarns arranged together. The process of arranging two sets of yarns together to make a fabric is called weaving. Let us try to weave some paper strips. Activity 5. Take two sheets of paper of different colors. Cut square pieces of length and width equal to 30 centimeters from each sheet. Now, fold both the sheets into half. On one sheet draw lines as shown in the Fig 3.12a, and on the other as shown in Fig 3.12b. Cut both the sheets along the dotted lines and then unfold. Weave the strips one by one through the cuts in the sheet of paper as shown in Fig 3.12c. Figure 3.12d shows the pattern after weaving all the strips. In a similar manner, two sets of yarn are woven to make a fabric. The yarns are much thinner than our paper strips, of course. Weaving of fabric is done on looms. Figure 3.13. The looms are either hand-operated or power-operated. Knitting. Have you noticed how sweaters are knitted? In knitting, a single yarn is used to make a piece of fabric. Figure 3.14. Have you ever pulled the yarn from a torn pair of socks? What happens? A single yarn gets pulled out continuously as the fabric gets unraveled. Socks and many other clothing items are made of knitted fabrics. Knitting is done by hand and also on machines. Weaving and knitting are used for making different kinds of fabric. These fabrics are used for a variety of clothing items. 3.6 History of clothing material. Have you ever wondered what materials people used in ancient times for clothes? It appears that in those times people used the bark and big leaves of trees or animal skins and furs to cover themselves. After people began to settle in agricultural communities, they learned to weave twigs and grass into mats and baskets. Vines, animal fleece or hair were twisted together into long strands. These were woven into fabrics. The early Indians wore fabrics made out of cotton that grew in the regions near the river Ganga. Flax is also a plant that gives natural fibers. In ancient Egypt, cotton as well as flax were cultivated near the river Nile and were used for making fabrics. In those days, stitching was not known. People simply draped the fabrics around different parts of their body. Many different ways of draping fabrics were used. With the invention of the sewing needle, people started stitching fabrics to make clothes. Stitched clothes have gone through many variations since this invention. But, is it not amazing that even today sari, dhoti, lungi or turban is used as an unstitched piece of fabric? Just as there is a large variety in the food eaten all over our country, a large variety exists also in fabrics and clothing items. That brings us to the end of this chapter. Important keywords: cotton wool fabric, fiber, knitting, spinning, weaving, yarn. Summary: there is a variety of clothing material or fabric, such as cotton, silk, wool and polyester. Fabrics are made from yarns, which in turn are made from fibers. Fibers are either natural or synthetic. Cotton, wool, silk and jute are some natural fibers, while nylon and polyester are some examples of synthetic fibers. Fibers like cotton and jute are obtained from plants. The process of making yarn from fibers is called spinning. Fabric from yarns is made by weaving and knitting.